Hey guys, welcome to another VFX tutorial on the channel. Today we're going to be learning how to remove markers from the scene in a basic VFX shot. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, like always, all the files that I use are in the description below to download. Now, I do highly recommend that you do your own footage, however, because you'll learn a lot. Basically, just follow, try to do the same thing that I'm doing on this video up on the screen right now. The only thing that you want to do is just make sure that your markers can be seen very high contrast. So I have black markers on a white canvas. You also want to make sure that your actual floor or floor plane or whatever is a very solid color. You don't want any patterns or anything because this method won't really work. So just one solid color and that should work. Anyways, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to come here, go to the motion tracking tab, then open up our footage. Okay, so here's the footage. I'm just going to open that up. Then first thing that we want to do is come over here, set the scene frames and prefetch our footage just so it's easier to play back and everything. I have tons of motion tracking tutorials linked in the description below, so if you want to go check those out, make sure to go down there. But next we can actually go ahead and set the match to previous frame, normalize, and then we want to set the correlation to be a 0.9. So that's all looking good. And this scene is super easy to track just because we have all these nice little markers right here. So let's just control click all these. Now we won't worry about the size yet because we'll actually just make all of the markers have a larger size. And we are staying on the location motion model, so that is all looking good. So then we can just select S to scale up like that, just so we have a little bit more space to work with all of our markers and everything. Then just A to select all of those, and then we can hold Control and T to go ahead and let those track forward. Okay, so all my markers got to the end of the clip, and that's because I prepped my footage and everything. I had no motion blur or anything. I had very little handshake and everything. So that is looking good. We can go ahead and solve. I'm just gonna set my A and B keyframe to be 1 to 100. Just play around with that for your own footage. You want to see where you have the most parallax, where the markers move the most. That's where you want to set your A and B keyframe, and then we're going to refine the K1, K2, and the focal length. And you can see I got a solve error of a 0.3. You want to try to get that as low as possible if you're using your own footage. Anything below a 0.3 or anything is really good, so you want to try to get it as low as possible. So we have that set up. We now need to set up our tracking scene. So let's just hit that right there. And now you can see up here that we actually have our little cube and everything in our scene. So that is looking good. You'll see that it's not really orientated. Here are our points and here are our cube and stuff. So it's not really on the same plane where they need to be. So let's just select this one, this one, and this one. You want to try to form a 90-degree angle and then set that as your floor. Now you can see that they're more aligned. Let's just go into the camera view. And then we need to we'll select this one to be our origin point, and then this one we'll set our y-axis like that. Let's just put the origin in the middle. And then final thing, we just need to select two of these, hit set scale, and I'm just going to bring this out a bit. Now if I was actually doing this for real, I would, of course measure the points in between and get the exact distance, but this is just an easy tutorial, so we're not going to worry about that. So basically we have all of our stuff set up now. We can actually come out to the layout tab and we can see that we have all this set up. Let me actually come up here, go to motion tracking, just so we can see our markers now. So if I hide this, you can see that our tracking markers are there and they do correspond in the camera. Okay, so the next thing that we need to do is to actually go ahead and prep up our scene. I'm going to go ahead and delete this collection that it created, and then also it created a background view layer as well. I'm just going to delete that. And since we deleted both of those, we can actually come out here to the Compositing tab, and we don't really need these 4 nodes right here. You can just go ahead and delete those since we just deleted both the view layer and collection. Now we just have a basic scene set up inside of Blender in the Compositing tab and everything. So now we can actually go ahead and get started adding in some 3D objects and everything. Now I'm going to keep it simple. I'm basically just going to have 2 characters kind of fighting each other and stuff. Now if you downloaded the link in the description, you can get all my files I'm using here, but if you don't want to pay for all my files, you can just come here. I used if you just type in Mixamo, this is a nice Adobe thing that you can use. I use set fistfight A and fistfight B, and then you can select your different characters. I believe I just use some of the default characters, this guy, and I believe where is he? this guy right here. So if you want to copy that, you can copy that as well. Also, the HDRI I'm using is right here. Link to that is in the description below if you're interested. Okay, so to actually go ahead and import those in, let's first of all delete this cube, then come up to File, Import, FBX. Then you basically just want to locate wherever you save those. Mine are here, so we're going to do A first, and then we're going to do that same exact thing. So import FBX. Then we're going to do B right here. And now you can see that both of them are in, but they aren't really aligned or anything. And so you might be wondering how you actually align those guys and everything. The easiest way I found for this specific one is to actually find a point where their fists connect, or they're supposed to connect or whatever. And so if we play this animation and stuff, you can see that one of the guy punches right here, or kicks. You can see that it's supposed to connect right there. So that's just an easy way we can kind of link up the two and everything. So let's first of all just select this guy. I'm going to go ahead and scale all of these guys up a little bit. So just hit A and then deselect all of the ones that aren't the actual models and everything, and then just S to scale those guys up just a tad. Now that we know where they kind of connect and everything, we can actually go ahead and start rotating them and everything. So first of all, let's just get this guy and his mesh. You want to select both the armature and the mesh. Then we're just going to rotate him on the Z axis, so press Z, and then 180 degrees. And then we basically just need to position him where the foot is supposed to connect. So G Shift Z right there, and we can kind of see, there we go. So that is looking pretty good. We also can see that he kind of punches right here. So another way to just make sure your models line up and everything is to kind of just come over here, and we're going to make sure that his fist, so we can see right here, his fist is supposed to hit his stomach. So we're just going to position him right there, and that should be good enough. These guys are pretty easy. They don't really touch that often, so we just got to make sure that when they do, it looks good. So that is looking good. In my scene, I will notice that we have them kind of misaligned. I'd rather them be rotated a different way, but we don't want to rotate before because that'll mess up the alignment with the two. So now we have this guy selected. Let's select this guy, and then we're just going to rotate both of them on the Z axis. Let's try 90 degrees. Like that. I like how that looks a little bit better. So now we actually have everything set up with the guys. Let's go ahead and come into the render view. You will notice that we are still on Eevee. So let's come over here, go to cycles, go to GPU compute, and I'm basically just going to set up all my settings. If you're interested in all the settings that I use, there's a link down in the description below that you can watch where I go over all my settings. The final thing you want to make sure that you have is come down to film and make sure that transparent is turned on, just so we have that little shadow catcher down below. You will notice that he looks kind of transparent, and that's just something weird that happens when you import an FBX sometimes. So let's come to the shading tab, and to fix that, we're just going to come down here and unplug the alpha, and so that should fix it. I don't know why it does that sometimes. It's just something annoying you gotta always check. Okay, so now let's actually view what we have so far. We have the camera tracked and everything, and then we can see our little models fighting and everything down here. It's real nice, easy way to get some free animation and everything real fast. So that is looking good. We can kind of see that their animation stops around 114, so I'm going to go 114 down here just so we don't have them just standing there and everything. So now what we can do is go ahead and mess around with our lighting of our scene. So let's just go ahead and first delete our light that was already inside of Blender. We're just going to start from scratch. Now we need to go into the shading tab, into the world settings, because world is where we're going to mess around with our HDRI. We can press period to go to where our nodes are. Then we're just going to hit Shift A. We're going to add in an environment texture. And then again, the link to my HDRI I'm using is down in the description below, right here. And then you do want to make sure it's aligned to your scene. For my specific one, I made sure that this HDRI is matched to the lighting of my actual scene I worked in. But let's go ahead and change this to scene world just so we can see that HDRI inside the material preview. If I go to my video clip and then go to camera setting, background images, and make the opacity up, we can actually see that our lighting is coming from over here in this direction, whereas now the lighting in our HDRI is coming from this direction. So what we can do is we can notice that we have these two lights right here. So what we need to do is go in and hit Control T. That'll add a mapping and texture coordinate. Then we basically just need to rotate that until it's the right way. So let's just rotate that until it's like right there. And now if we go ahead and render an image, we can see how that looks. Okay, you can see that my lighting now matches a lot better than before. We will notice that the motion blur is a little too intense right now, and that's to do with the scale of the actual scene. This is what I was talking about earlier. If I was doing it for real, I would make sure that the scale is actually correct and everything. But we can just mess around it for now and kind of fake that a little bit. So let's just turn the motion blur down just a tad, and let's give that a render. Okay, so that is looking really good. However, you will notice that we still have our tracking dots in the scene. So let's actually go ahead and kind of talk through how we're going to get rid of those. Basically, the method that we're going to use is to actually take this area. We're going to isolate a tracking dot. So with this black area, we're going to isolate that, and then we're going to make a mask so it just moves with the actual dot. And then what we can do is take that mask and then add a section over here. If you think of it as like a clone brush, it'll take whatever over here and move it over here. And then if we blur it and everything, it'll look like it's actually in the scene and everything. So that is the method that we're going to be using. Let's go ahead and work on that. Okay, so like I said before, we actually need to make a little mask for wherever our tracking dots are. So what's easy is that we actually have the tracking dots into our scene. So let's come over here to the motion tracking tab. You can see that all of our tracking markers already have dots on them, so that is really good. What we can actually do is hit A to select all of these, and so we can select all of those and then actually set those to be in our 3D viewport. If we come over here to this geometry, we can do 3D markers to mesh, and that'll actually make a mesh of where the markers are. So if we come to the layout tab, we will now see that we actually have this tracks right here, and if I move that around, you can see that we actually have vertices now wherever the tracking dots are. So that's really good. We're going to go ahead and add in a little sphere. This sphere is basically just going to act as our mask. So let's just move that out of the way first of all. We're basically going to be making a particle system for wherever those tracking dots are. So what we need to do is go ahead and shade in our sphere. We're going to make a new material. Instead of printable BSDF, we don't want any shading on this. We just want a simple black and white movie clip. So we're just going to come here and then go to the emission. And then we're just going to set our color to be all the way white. So that is looking good. Now we just need to come down here and select our little tracks. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of our tracking just because that gets in the way sometimes. So let's select our tracks. We're going to come to the particle settings, add a new particle system. I know I want the particles to be on the dot and not move and to be spawned at the very first frame. So what we can do is do all those. We'll just kind of walk through it. So first of all, we want all the dots to spawn on the first frame. So let's just hit 0 down here and then end at 0. So they'll all be spawned in at keyframe 0 basically. The lifetime is going to be 250, just however much you want. You just want it to be over your actual frame in. So mine is 314, so we just want it to be over that. Now down here we actually need to set it to be our little ball that we created. So render as, we're going to hit object, and this object is going to be our sphere over here. So that is looking good. We can mess around with some of this stuff later. So now if I could actually go to the start of the clip, you will notice that we don't really have anything right now. It's kind of weird and everything. So what we can do is actually come here. We're going to go up until it says source right here. And it says emit from faces right now. Since we don't really have any faces, that's why it's not really spawning correctly. So we need to set that from faces to vertices. And now if I go into the camera, we can actually see that we have the spheres in the actual vertices on our tracking markers. So that is looking good. Now we will see that we have duplicates and everything. It won't really matter too much, but what I'm going to do is just going to go ahead and set it down to 13. We can see that. You will also notice that some of the markers have now lost their actual dots on it, and that's because we actually have this random order on. So if I uncheck that, now all of our dots should have a marker on it. You will notice it's not covering up the whole marker and everything. So we actually need to scale that up a bit. Let's go to the render. Then we're going to scale that up until they're right around there. You just want to make sure it encapsulates the whole marker and everything. You can kind of come throughout your clip and just make sure, oh, we actually have something wrong. We can see that the particles and everything are actually being affected by gravity. And we don't want that. We just want them to stay still in the air. So to do that, we're just going to come down here to the field weights, then turn gravity all the way off. And so now they should just stay in midair like that. And so that is looking good. They still are doing a little bit of drifting, and that's actually because we have some velocity in the particles. Let's just come to the velocity tab. We can see that we have a 1 meter per second on the normal. We just want to change that down to 0. Okay, so now we can see that we have all of our particles spawned right here. So that is looking good. If I go ahead and render out this little animation real quick, you should see that we have, number one, we still have our characters in there. So we need to get rid of those. But you can see that this color that we selected is pretty much a pure white. It's not affected by shading or anything. So that's what we want. I'm going to go ahead and make a new collection for our actual characters, so we can turn that on and off pretty easily. So we have a collection here. I'm just going to put both of these armatures in here, and then we also have to put in some of the meshes and everything into there. So just put those in there, and now if we turn them off, we should see that they're no longer going to be rendered. So that is looking good. Now we also need to put the ground in that collection as well. And then finally, we can see that here is our render result. But if we go and render this out, you will notice that we have all of the things, but we also have our background. So we need to go into the compositing, and then we just want the render layers to be composited. So just do that. And then to save us a little time, I'm just going to come up here, and instead of in cycles, since this is such an easy animation, we're just going to render this in Eevee, and that should make the render time way less. You can see that it's now below 2 seconds, so that's really nice. But we pretty much have it all set up now. We need to make sure our frames are correct, and then we can go ahead and render this out. This is basically just going to be a sort of mask animation, so we're just going to go in here. Name this whatever you want. I'm just going to name this mask for me. Hit accept, and then we can turn this to FFmpeg video, MP4, and then high quality, like that. And you will notice if we go ahead and render out an image, you will notice that we have transparency. However, if we render it as a MP4 file, then it'll fill in the transparency to be black, and so that's what we want. So that's why we're not really messing around with the film transparent. So now we can actually go ahead and render out this animation to use into our compositing. Okay, so just finished rendering. Here's the result that we got. We basically just have some white markers moving around our scene and everything. It looks pretty cool by itself. But now we can actually go ahead and start combining some of that and compositing and remove some of our tracking markers. So let's just come back out of here. We're going to go back inside of cycles. And then we want to get rid of these tracking markers. So let's just open this up, this panel right here. And then we have this right here. We can just hide that from the view and also the render. And finally, we can bring these guys back just so we have these guys back in our scene. Now let's actually go to the compositing tab and start to composite some of this stuff in. So first of all, attach the render layers node here. And then this to the composite. Now I always like to hit this convert to pre-multiply. That just helps with the alpha channel. Now we actually need to go ahead and start getting rid of some of these markers and everything. Okay, to get started in removing these markers, we're going to go ahead and import in our mask that we just made. So let's go search this, go up to movie clip. We're going to import that in. So here is mine, just going to open that clip up. And so here is what it looks like in our thing. So we can actually use that as a factor in a alpha over node to kind of utilize that. So we're just going to drop in, like I said, an alpha over, make sure convert pre-multiply is checked. Then we're going to plug that into the factor. And then the movie clip is going to be plugged into both of these image sockets right here. Now if we view this, you should notice that nothing has really changed, and that's actually because we haven't translated the movie clip over to kind of occupy this space. So what we can do is just going to add in a translate node like here. We're going to do that in the bottom socket, I believe, and then we're just going to mess around with this X value until we basically remove these markers like that. Let's see how this looks. So that looks pretty cool. You will notice that we do still see the markers, and that's kind of a weird thing that happens with this movie clip node. Basically all that means is that these values aren't pure white. This is kind of like a grayish, like slightly gray. So what we need to do is gonna go ahead and add in a color ramp. We can just plug that in right there. Let's go ahead and view that. We're basically just gonna crank this white all the way closer to black. And that should clip this to be more white. And so now if we view this, we should see that the markers have actually disappeared. And now we can see this nice little kind of halo effect going on right here. And so to get rid of that, first of all, we can go ahead and make the circle a little bit larger, since we didn't make the sphere as large as we needed it to be. So what we can do is going to go ahead and add in a dilate and a road node just right here, and we can actually make that, let's make it right here maybe. Just going to puff those out a little bit more. This is before, and then this is after that dilate and a road node. You can just see that puffs it out a little bit just so we have more area to work with. And then finally we need to go ahead and add in a little bit of a blur. That'll get rid of these edges and make it look more like it's in the shot and everything. So let's just add in a blur node. Gonna move this up. Let's try 10. 10 is pretty small. Yeah, so that gets rid of most of the edges. I'm actually gonna go up. Let's see if we can get away with a 20. Might need to go down a little bit though. That's looking pretty good. Just for the sake of mine, I'm going to go down to a 15 just in case it kind of clips the edges and stuff. So now you can see that the markers have basically disappeared from our scene. So if we kind of scroll out through here, we can see that we no longer have the markers in our scene, and it kind of looks like, for the most part, that our markers were never there and everything. So this is why we filmed a black marker on a white canvas and everything. This is why we needed it to be a solid color instead of a pattern or anything, just because a solid color is better to actually move and translate that image over and everything. So basically now we have everything done. We just need to composite it all together. So I'm gonna have this over here. Let's add this alpha over here, plug this alpha over into this one, and now let's just give this a quick little look. You should notice nothing is happening, and that's actually because we need to render out an image. Okay guys, so we have everything correct. One little thing that I noticed is that the shadows don't really match in our scene, so just for the sake of this VFX shot, I'm going to go ahead and add in another point light just to act as a shadow caster. So let's just add that in, let's bring that up a bit. Then we're just going to increase the power like that, just so we have some nice little shadows in our scene. Okay, so that's pretty much it for this tutorial. The final result is playing on the screen right now. Now for my final, I actually took it into After Effects and added some noise onto the characters and everything, just to kind of blend it in more with our scene. But as you can see, we got a pretty nice result with not that much effort and everything. This is kind of just a nice little way to actually remove some markers in our scene, and it actually leads to better motion tracking and everything. So I highly recommend this method if you have areas that are hard to do. It really just helps you a lot inside of VFX when you can take stuff out and add it in later or anything like that. But anyways guys, that's going to be it for this tutorial. We have a Patreon and a Discord. Links to those are in the description below. But anyways guys, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys later. Peace.